Hello, live streamers. Welcome back to day 2 at the Palo Alto Enlightenment Expo for our next amazing speaker. Welcome to everybody joining us here live. Many of you who have been in this speaker room, keeping the seats warm all day, and we're so blessed and grateful to have you. And our next speaker, it just keeps getting better and better. Today has been an extraordinary day. It's always an extraordinary day at our Enlightenment Expos, but I don't know, today has a certain feeling about it. So it's perfect that we have our next amazing speaker coming up for you, Carmen Fromont. Carmen began her spiritual journey as she trained as a yoga teacher in her 20s. She explored many pathways leading to God, believing that more than one way was available. It was through a Western master, Omram Mikhail Ivanhoff, that she discovered her family of souls. How lucky are you? It's amazing. And the keys to solve the problems of existence. Through pursuing her flying career, she was an amazing flight attendant. Carmen became an author and the coordinator of the Aquarian team with 3 books published so far. Carmen has been giving talks around the world. She's given many podcasts, recorded episodes for Om Times TV, and has been teaching the sacred dance, and I'm going to make sure I say this correctly, Panyaridmi? Okay, I said it perfectly. Go figure, Panyaridmi, which I'd like to learn more about. Today, Carmen will take us on a journey through nutrition, reincarnation, and sexuality in the light of initiatic science. So without further ado, let's welcome Carmen.
Thank you for every one of you for being here. And before we start, I invite you to take maybe less than a minute of silence so that we become receptive, our soul opens up so that you can learn as much as possible. A short minute. So today we have 3 big subjects to cover. 3 subjects that affect all of us: nutrition, sexuality, and reincarnation. But we won't talk about food combination or positions here. We're going to change the level from which to understand things. And to relate to where I'm coming from is, people thought for the longest time that it was the sun that was turning around the earth and that the earth was at the center for centuries and centuries. And that was called the geocentric point of view. And then somebody came and said, it's the sun that is at the center and the planets turn around. Well, that took a long, long time for the church, the politics, to accept that point of view. Now we all know it's called the heliocentric point of view, and we accept the fact that the Earth is one of the planets that turns around the sun. Well, when we understand certain things from the point of view of the Earth, we may not have the full point of view of things. Maybe because of our culture, because of our education, we see things from the materialistic point of view. All education is based on learning things intellectually, being more competitive to have a better position in life, and it has a certain value to it. But as you're here, because you're looking after your development and evolution, to take another point of view, like the point of view of the great teachers, the initiates, the masters, they come from another point of view, which is the point of view of the spirit. It is from the heliocentric point of view, the spirit at the center, that they explain things, and not from the human point of view or from the earth point of view that they see things. So let's begin with nutrition. We all have to eat once, twice, or three times a day because otherwise the body will not survive. Well, maybe 60 days is the longest that somebody's gone without food, without water. Then it goes down to only a few days. And without air, even a few minutes, 4 minutes, and you lose your brain function. It tells us one thing: the more subtle, the most important it is, right? Makes sense. So when we look at food as physical food, we try to feed the body. But what about our subtle bodies? What about the astral, which is the emotional body? What about the mental body? And yet we have three more subtle bodies, which is the causal body, the higher reason. That's where all the prototypes, the geometrical figures are, in that causal body. When inventors invent something, they take the prototype in that world, the causal body. Then there's the Buddhic body, which is the body of the soul, the higher soul. And then there's the Atmic body, which is the world of spirit. So we haven't learned about these subtle bodies, but because we have life, we have those subtle bodies. We're not aware of them because we don't work with them. They are like when you break an arm and it hasn't worked for many, many weeks in a plaster. When you try to give it order, it doesn't obey. You have to go to physiotherapy to get it mobile again. It's the same with these subtle bodies because we don't use them, we don't work with them. They're dormant. They're not atrophied, but they're dormant. So using nutrition to nourish our subtle bodies will provide us a type of yoga that is so quick with rewards. People do yoga because they're looking for relaxation. They're also knowing that it will require attention, concentration, and self-control in yoga. Well, the yoga of nutrition called Jnani yoga is that type of yoga where if you concentrate and you focus and you exercise self-control, you will discover elements in the food that you eat that will start nourishing your subtle bodies. For example, if you eat in a hurry and maybe complaining or arguing, your digestive system is affected by that because your attitude impregnates your food. But if you take time to relax, to say thank you for the food that is before you, and you are receptive towards the subtle elements that compose it, all of a sudden you're extracting from the food elements that you would not get if you were eating in a hurry. Makes sense, right? Do you remember the movie Karate Kid with Miyagi, the teacher? Miyagi and Dan. Dan wanted in a hurry to know the movement so he would go and oppose his enemy. Miyagi said, you're going to start painting like this with the two hands. You're going to start shining the car like this. What he was giving him were keys to concentrate. And by concentrating, he was able to be more focused. And in that focus, he could get the result he wanted without having to all the heavy training that others were taking in this other karate classes. It's the same with us. If we know how to concentrate, if you take that opportunity 3 times a day to eat your food with attention, reverence, not only do you nourish your subtle bodies, but you gather your energy into one direction. Do you remember the old cameras where you had to adjust the focus. Even very performing cameras, you still have to adjust the focus. In order to have a clear picture, it was good to adjust the focus, otherwise everything was hazy. But once the focus was made, you had a clear picture of your subject. It's the same with us. If we know how to concentrate, gather our energy in one focal point, then the picture is clear. So when you eat with attention, self control, and focus, you gather all the energies that would be dispersed into 1,001 thoughts. And by bringing them together, an hour or so later, maybe even half an hour, whoops, there's a clarity inside that reveals solution to problems, that gives you a good insight. That's because of the ability to concentrate. So there are keys for this yoga of nutrition. The first one is to start with small things, like your cutlery, your glass, your plate. Try to handle them so there's no noise. That will develop your attention and your focus. Just that little exercise will bring you rewards beyond what you've ever experienced before. Small thing. The second thing is chew your food well until it's almost liquid, that it goes down on its own. And there's a reason for this. It's because above the tongue and below the tongue, we have glands whose function is to extract the etheric body from food. And that's very important because your best defense mechanism against illnesses is your etheric body. It's the seat of vitality. So by chewing your food properly, if you add also conscious breathing as you chew, these glands will deliver the etheric energy from your food and your etheric body will be stronger. The etheric body is the first body that nourishes the nervous system. That's why even before the food hits the tummy, you already feel some satisfaction from just a few mouthfuls of bread or whatever. Already you feel there's something that is already nourished. That's because the etheric body is looking after the nervous system. Very important. The third key, I mentioned it a little bit, is do some conscious breathing. As you chew, you inhale and you can even visualize the breath of air sustaining your etheric body. The fourth point is to be very grateful in your heart because food is like a love letter from the Creator. You know that everything starts in the invisible. Take, for example, you have a thought to invent something or to start a new company or to create a product. First, it's a thought. The thought is there, it kind of works, it's magic. And then you need the heart, you need the feeling, the enthusiasm to get going with it. Who could help me? How will that be produced? And then the third step is to gather the elements that will compose that invention. So everything starts from the invisible as a thought, goes through the emotional part because it's the motor to get things moving, and then to realize it in matter, the product. So it is the same when we say thank you, thank you, thank you with all your heart. It's like you're taking the substance in the food from the invisible world and you bring it to feed your astral body, your emotions, with something that is very beautiful, gratitude. And the next one is to think that your food, which started in the subtle plane, through the sun, the stars, the constellation, Mother Earth has produced fruits and vegetables and whatever else. So there is components in the mental world that gives you the vitamins, the minerals, the protein, whatever composes that food. So you see how your mental body is nourished, your astral body is nourished, your etheric body is nourished, and of course your body will be nourished even more so because you will have eaten in alignment with your spiritual self. Not just horizontally to quickly feed your body and go on to the next activity all scattered as many of us are involved in life. We're working, we have families. If we just took time 3 times a day, twice a day, if you're down to 1 time a day, do it consciously. So that's the way of eating. Now let's talk about the food that is the most nourishing for our system, our body and bodies with the different levels. The food that contains the most solar light is the one that contains the prana, is the one that contains the subtle energies that are the purest. That means fruit, vegetables, grain, nuts, seeds. The food that rots the fastest is meat. It is the one that contains the least solar particles. So as we engage on the path of evolution, maybe we want to consider to use solar food as the most sustaining food for our subtle bodies. I know it doesn't sit with everybody to make a step to become vegetarians, but there are reasons why on the path towards perfection that we choose that option. Because when animals go to the slaughterhouse, they know they're going to die, and they're not happy about that. And they scream and yell, and it brings an acidity in their flesh that is being eaten by people. So I'll tell you a story. I was a flight attendant, like Barbara said, for 49 years. And one day we had a passenger in first class who had such a strong smell. Us, the crew, were saying, ooh. I said, okay, I'm going to find out. I'm going to go and talk to him after the meal service. So I went to him and I asked him, did you just board in Vancouver or did you come from somewhere else? He said, I just came from Beijing. All right. And what were you doing? I'm talking about in the 80s, this story is. He says, I'm working for the Canadian government establishing standards for slaughterhouses in China. Ah, I says, that's very interesting. Now tell me, is it true that when animals are brought to the slaughterhouse, the noise is so much from the animals that you inject them with a tranquilizer so the employees are not so affected by the noise? And he said, yes, it's true. So not only was there the fear of the animal that is communicated through their flesh, there's also the tranquilizers that are injected into them for the satisfaction of the employees. So there's the fear, the cruelty, and there's one third element among the animals is the need to reproduce without question. So by eating meat, it links us to the fear, the cruelty, and the need to reproduce. So it is something that when you're ready, when you want to nourish the different aspects of your being, to consider those elements. They're pretty heavy, I understand. The other thing with nutrition is that there is also some kind of ethics in nourishing yourself. If you always fill yourself to the fullest, it engages the digestive system, yes. But if you leave a little bit of room to not eat to your fill, it will force the body to go and seek in the subtle bodies what will support you better. So just leave a little fill. Another thing to consider is maybe fasting. You know, intermittent fasting has become very popular over the years. In the divine school of Omram Mikhail Ivanov, Disciples are welcome to do 24-hour of fasting, but a lazy week. So let's take Thursday. You have breakfast Thursday morning, you have lunch Thursday noon, you skip dinner Thursday night, and you skip breakfast Friday morning. Then you have your lunch Friday and your dinners Friday night. So you've eaten twice on Thursday, you've eaten twice on Friday, but you fasted noon to noon. What a nice lazy week. Even flying, I could do that. There was no problem. And that allows your system to rest. It allows your ego to say, no, I'm the one deciding right now. You're not going for this. So it's part of the self-control we talked about at the beginning. Finding ways to establish your own kingdom through your masterhood decisions. And it's also a time where maybe you will listen to some very beautiful music that is uplifting, where you read a book that will inspire you because you become more receptive. If your tummy is not busy digesting, then you're maybe more awake and receptive on other level. So it's a very good time through a short fast or a longer fast to nourish your subtle bodies. So that being said, there's also other types of food that are even more subtler, like prayers, meditation, contemplation, and identification. These are processes that all great teachers and masters know. If you want to become one with God, you start with these processes and you develop one after the other. And that requires the same thing as with the yoga of nutrition: attention, concentration, and self-control. These processes of praying, meditating, contemplating, identifying are steps in the development that the soul needs in order to fuse with spirit. Now, we're going to jump from nutrition to sexuality. We think that sexuality just relates to, yes, do you want to ask a question now?
About the first part, do you mind?
Yes?
Okay. So it's interesting hearing this. I don't sleep well. I'm up every 2 hours. I have PTSD. They say it's adrenals. But what's interesting hearing you speak about food and helping your nervous system is what breaks the cycle, even though the Western medicine said don't eat late at night. If I eat, I break the cycle. I sleep for 3-4 hours, but it doesn't matter what I eat. I'm not eating all the foods on your list. It's something that's kind of an aha moment for me, that it must be my nervous system that's calming the food.
Mm-hmm. So I repeat the question for people who are online listening to this talk at the moment. So the lady is saying she has PTSD, she has trouble sleeping, and to break this cycle, eating helps her. And I agree with you in the sense that if we don't eat, the energy goes somewhere else. And if it goes into the brain, you may be very busy in your mind. And one way to break the system is if you have food in your tummy, then the energy is there and then this slows down. But there are some other means. There are prayers you can say until you fall asleep. My favorite one, when I was so jet lagged for so many years, was Psalm 91. It's so long that if I manage making it to the end, I was lucky. The Psalm 91. Psalm 91. And if I started it a second time, I rarely finished it. I fell asleep before finishing the prayer. Another way is turn on your light and start reading inspiring, reading something not complicated, something that will just ease your mind from jumping from one thing to the next. The mind is meant to think, but because we have not trained it, it's thinking so many thoughts by the minute that we lose our power. So the idea is to slow down the mind, give it something nice to read, something inspiring, where your soul connects to what you're reading so that your mind doesn't go to history or future things. Okay, does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Another thing you can do is rub your solar plexus and just bring it some calm and nice feeling, because your solar plexus is actually your feeling brain. Here, the white matter is on the outside. Here, the white matter is on the inside. So that's why people say, oh, I had a gut feeling about this. The gut feeling defies the reason, because this has a very big truth about it. And it's not just a solar plexus, it's a hara center connected. Okay? So back to sexuality. We have all come from sex. Undeniable, we're on earth, this is how it is. There is men and women, and we're not going to go into the transgender ideology because that's another chapter and it's not our goal here. To understand where the sexual energy connects us in our soul, in our spirit, we have to come back to the structure that the great masters see in the invisible. So there's the Godhead. God decided that he would like to manifest himself. So out of the Godhead came the polarity. The polarity is the eternal masculine, the eternal feminine. And this you can verify everywhere in nature through electricity, magnetism, acid and base, men and women. So in the world of principles where the eternal masculine feminine is that came out of unity, you have duality or polarity. Without polarity, there's no life. It's as plain as this. In the polarity, you have the electricity, if you want, or you have the eternal masculine that thrusts forward. That's its duty, thrust forward. Our anatomy, the anatomy of man is like this. In the eternal feminine, you have the receptivity, so that you have electricity and magnetism. That's how electricity works, with the plug and the receptor, right? With the acid and the base, you get the salt. With the father, the mother, you get the child. So you have unity, polarity, trinity. That's the world of principles. Beyond the world of principles, you have the world of laws. We'll cover that when we talk about reincarnation in a short while. And then the world of manifestations. That's where matter exists. So to understand sexuality properly is we have to go back to the eternal masculine and feminine as being cosmic energy. That cosmic energy, as it comes down and is interpreted through us, can be attraction at the sexual organs, and that's where a lot of people live their life by, is that attraction. The next level it goes through is into the muscles, and that becomes movement. That's how you decide with that same energy that you're going to exercise your muscle. The third one is the feeling from the hara, the solar plexus, and the heart. That's where now emotions and sensations come in. The next level, the same cosmic energy goes through, is through the brain, where it becomes reason and intelligence. So if all the energy goes there and stays there, the rest is not fed properly. So cosmic intelligence is very brilliant. It has created the channels through which we can bring this energy up in order to reach back to the source where we came from. But if we only use it at the bottom level, there's no pressure to go up. Just take the example of a building, 10-story building. If the inhabitants on the ground floor all open their taps full volume, there's no pressure for the other floors to be fed. It's the same with us. There's a difference between sexuality and love. You'd say, where is the mark? Where is the difference? Well, sexuality is very ego-driven. Self-satisfaction, sometimes at the expense of the partner. It's always about me, myself, and I. It's very ego-driven because it hasn't evolved. It's still at that level of attraction. So it wants its pleasure. But once we grow spiritually, we learn that pleasure is only one aspect of life. That if we know how to use certain elements for our growth and development, then this pressure starts going up and it becomes a work rather than just a pleasure. In fact, so much so that this work opens channels to a different type of pleasure, which can reach ecstasy. It's far better than the attraction on the lower level. And if only the young people, the youth, knew that the waste they produce there feeds the astral level, then they get confused. They get into all the negative jealousy and anger and elements that remain at the level of attraction. If they only knew that it's a quintessence, it's a divine quintessence. That's what this sexual energy is, this cosmic energy. It's a quintessence, but it's raw. It's raw because we are in matter. So it's up to us through our consciousness to sublimate it, to transform that energy and bring it to serve. And the best ally you can get to achieve this is to have a high ideal. A high ideal like becoming Christ-like, to become your higher self, to have a mind as luminous as the sun, a heart as pure as crystal, a soul as vast as the universe, and a spirit as powerful as God and one with God. This is the ideal that in the divine school of Omra Michaela Ivanov, we repeat. We repeat this high ideal because whenever there is something that is troubling us, if we repeat the high ideal, it's like the energy takes another direction from where it wanted to take us, whether it was anger or sexual satisfaction. But I'm not talking about depriving that energy from operating or negating it, because it's like a dam. If you don't know how to work with it, it will crush you. But if you know how to dedicate it, orient it for a divine purpose, you awaken all your subtle bodies for that energy to bring you to where that high ideal is. These are pedagogical, psychological tricks that are so powerful. If you know your psychic structure with your subtle bodies, you will want to choose a high ideal. It's your savior into any kind of situations where your ego is trying to bring you back closer to matter and where your soul is aspiring to something higher. The high ideal is a wonderful way to deal with sexuality. And sexuality sublimated, when you think of the other one first before yourself, that becomes love. Whatever we do that is altruist, this is how spirit works. Spirit never thinks of taking. Spirit is always wanting to give. So when we are willing to give, when we are willing to think of the others first, we nourish that higher self in connection with spirit. Of course, if you're built like a bull, you may think this is too difficult. This is a language you don't understand. Well, get married in a hurry, find the right wife so that your energy is at least not detrimental to a bunch of women, to one, and from there you will have space to grow. But for those who are more prepared, who are consciously seeking to reach out to perfection, transform the sense of pleasure to working with that energy. It is a sacred cosmic energy available to every one of us, Knowing how to use it is a tool towards your growth that is very, very rewarding in a sense of expansion. The more we expand our consciousness, the greater we are working towards the Christ consciousness. We are awake, I said in one of the books I co-authored, maybe at 5%. Einstein was 8%, so we'll be modest, we'll say 5%. That means that 95% of us works within that 5%. That means we repeat patterns, cliches, and our world revolves around that 5%. Our duty is to become 100% conscious. That means Buddha-like, Christ-like. So what we need is expand our consciousness so that we have more and more room for spirit to come in. Remember, spirit is the one thrusting, and the one receiving it is the feminine principle. So our soul has to create the room for spirit to come in. And to create that space in the soul, sometimes it means making sacrifices, being conscious and aware, and moving forward. Which means I have to move forward real quick into reincarnation. So I told you about the world of principles with unity, duality, trinity, then the world of laws. And that's where we know some of these laws. It's just we have not transposed it into what it means in our life. You know the law of agriculture, you see, you reap what you sow. You plant bananas, you don't get potatoes, right? It's obvious because the laws of nature are there. Well, that's linked to the law of action and reaction, cause and effect. With time, it's been distorted and it's been called the law of karma. Now, karma means you're paying for your misdeed of another life. But in fact, karma is the law of action and reaction, cause and effect. That's one law. We are all tied to it, and all of nature, all the hierarchy, all the way down to the kingdoms of the mineral, all these laws operate through everything. So the law of karma is the one that tells us why we were born in such a country, in such a place, in such circumstances, in relation to what we've created before, when we borrowed another body and we tried to grow and develop. The law of reincarnation exists through all religions. It's only on the 4th century that the Christian church did away from the law of reincarnation because they wanted people to just believe in them and be condemned for eternity if they didn't believe what they said. That's not my concept of God. It was pretty hard, but by removing the law of reincarnation, it took away the sense of responsibility that we have. By accepting reincarnation, not only does it tell us as the first benefit that there's no mistake as to where we were born, which culture, which parent. It's like cosmic intelligence has this big computer where all the stories of all the souls are in there. And there is a library called the Akasha Chronica, where some are able to go and read all the story of your soul from the time you were a spark and decided to learn about God and who you are. So that's where you started to descend into matter, step by step. So where you are today is part of this Akasha Chronica. The second benefit of accepting reincarnation is that the fault doesn't belong to the government or to the parents or to the culture. It is where you choose to be voluntarily or involuntary in order to keep progressing in your evolution. Once you know that, you don't feel like rebelling. You don't feel like blaming others. You accept that you are where you are because this cosmic computer has chosen the best condition for you to be there. The third benefit of reincarnation is it helps you develop your willpower to do the best that you have so that you have a bright future that no longer depends on a very revengeful God or on circumstances that you have no inkling about. You prepare your condition now through your conscious willpower for what will be into your next life. Three great benefits about reincarnation. It's not the only law. There's some other laws. There's the law of affinity, which we say birds of the same feather flock together. You've heard that, right? Drunkards attract each other, partygoers attract each other. It's a law of affinity. We don't make them up. These laws are there. Another law is the law of justice. You go to the grocery store, you pay, you get some food for it. That's kind of human justice. It's trading values. But there's another justice, divine justice, which means if you put a few more cherries to the kilo of cherry in order to please your customer, you give something that they did not ask for, but it's a pleasure to give them a little more. Now you're starting to touch divine justice. Divine justice has a lot of room for you to give more. And as you give more, you start tapping into another law that is the law of benevolence, or what they call dharma. Anything that you do to help others with no reward to yourself. It's like you get brownie points or stars, but in fact, you become more spirit-like because remember, spirit always likes to give. Spirit is never the one that is waiting for something in return. So the more that we give without expectations, the more we tap into the essence of spirit. And that's called divine justice, because divine justice is very generous. And I have to rush through, but there's one more very important thing to know. Human beings follow 4 categories. The first category is they have no choice in choosing their incarnation. They are propelled by necessity where they deserve to be to learn what they need to learn. The 24 elders, which is a celestial council, looks at the history of this soul and decides this soul needs to pay for this and this and that, and they need to learn this and this and that. We're going to send them there. So that's called the law of necessity. The second law is the law of not total free will, but where you have a choice. Because your consciousness is open and receptive, because you are reaching to your divine self, and you have some qualities and virtues to develop that are not quite in place, you decide. You say, oh, there's this family there that would give me the perfect occasion to develop what I need to develop. Well, it could be artistic talents, it could be whatever. And the 24 elders say, you're right, go there. You will have a wonderful incarnations. You will learn what you need. So that's the second category. The third category is these beings that are almost at the state of illumination. They only have a few things to work. They miss maybe 1 or 2 things, and they have all the means to achieve it because they're awakened enough. These beings are now free. When they leave, they've learned their lesson. They never need to incarnate again. That's a third category. The fourth category is those that have reached ecstasy, those that are illuminated. They look at humanity and they say, poor human beings, do they ever need help? So they're willing to come out of their samadhi, they're willing to come out of their ecstasy, and they decide to come back down. And it's never easy for them. Take the story of all the great teachers and masters of humanity. They've had their share to suffer. On the cross, in jail, whatever. It's not easy, but they're beyond that. They don't have nothing to pay. They are free inside. They will accept their outer conditions to be on the cross. Father, let it be thy will. They are beyond rebelling. They've reached that state of oneness with God. They know their body is only there temporarily to teach something to humanity. But of course, it's the very rare beings. There's not too many who reach that fourth category. But it should be an incentive for us to wherever we're at to want to be in the next category and make the efforts. We've only got about 4 or 5 minutes for questions and answers. But I want to tell you right away before I'm rushed out of here by the next speaker that I have prepared a book for each one of you, pre-dedicated at home with a separate wish for every book. All I need to put is your name. If I don't have time within 10 minutes to write your name in the book, please come to the stand, which is right behind here, and then we'll have the time we need. Okay, questions? Yes.
The section when you said that you accept and just not rebel, but isn't part of the your part of being here is not necessarily to rebel, to be on the side that is helping others in your rebellion to whatever you're rebelling. You know what I'm saying? It's like when people are protesting, they're not protesting just for themselves. They're protesting for everybody, for those they care about. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So that's where do they fall?
Where do they fit? So the question is, there are people that are demonstrating to help others. They're not just for their own cause. They want to be of support to whatever cause. Well, it's good to work with others. The collectivity has a power. We would almost have to talk about good and evil. Seen again from the divine point of view, evil is only evil up to the angel level. Beyond the angel level, there's no more evil. It's like it's been transmuted. The frequency doesn't reach beyond angels. So at our level, when we consider evil being evil, do we have the understanding that it's a force that is maybe awakening people, that is forcing them to think, that is forcing them to, through harsh conditions, to wake up to the divine? And then maybe if it's that, then evil is serving a cause. And there's a beautiful image used by Omra Mikhaila Ivanov, and it's the one of the wheel. The wheel is turning this way here, but over here it's turning at opposite. If the wheel stops turning because we don't want evil in life, then the wheel goes nowhere. But if evil is used properly, then it creates a force, and the more it turns, the more the mud spits out. So if we take the conditions out there in the world or in our life where we think this is so evil, yes, it is evil at one level of consciousness, but what is the gold beyond this evil? What is the element that can bring me closer to God in that situation? And you make choices when you ask yourself that question. Remember, we have two natures, the human nature, the divine nature. The human nature will always rebel and find excuse and justifications to remain the way it is. The divine nature is always willing to go above itself, to see the brighter side of things. So in any situation, be it political, familial, economical, try to see it from the divine point of view. First of all, it relaxes the emotions that get so engaged into rebelling and being frustrated with things. To rise above this and say, maybe there is a divine plan, and the divine plan maybe is to bring people to choose their priorities better, understand things from a higher point of view. It's not justifying people that do bad things. They are ruled by karma. They will pay what needs to be paid for the damage they've done. And it's not me saying this. The laws are in action. God is way above the laws. He created the laws so he wouldn't have to worry about those things. He's in his unity world. So it's for us to see through the principles and through the laws. How do we understand the earthly problems here? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so the next speaker is going to be coming. I'm going to go and sign your names in the book, or you come and meet me at the table. And the books that I've talked about today is Gnani Yoga, the Yoga of Nutrition, Love and Sexuality, the Sexual Force or the Winged Dragon, and Cosmic Moral Law, Man Master of His Destiny. In here, you will understand the laws and reincarnation in far more details than what I could deliver today. So these books are at our table. Come and see us, and I will quickly go and sign. Thank you for being here.